Admitting a few more into the waiting room, and then we'll be ready.
John Hornbuckle. How you
How
feeling,
you
buddy?
doing?
How you
Doing
doing?
well,
How you
doing.
feeling? You get all healed up?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Charlie.
You're welcome, man.
All right, folks, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it. I'm Don Smith, Executive Director of the West Virginia Press Association, and welcome to the 2021 Legislative Lookahead presented by the West Virginia Press Association, AARP West Virginia, WVU University Relations, and the West Virginia Press Association Foundation. Thank everyone for attending today's House panel. The panel includes House Delegate Speaker Roger Hanshaw of Clay County, Delegate Amy Summers of Taylor County, Delegate Paul Espinosa of Jefferson County, Delegate Doug Skaff of Kanawha County, and Delegate Sean Hornbuckle of Cabell County. Our order will be an opening 15 minutes, statements from Speaker Hanshaw, Delegate Summers, and Delegate Espinosa, followed by 15 minutes of minority Delegate Skaff and Hornbuckle, and then we'll have time for additional comments from all delegates and questions from the media. We will share email addresses after the call to help with follow-ups and questions that weren't answered. 2 questions, delegates, that I hope we can address are plans for handling the threat of COVID during the legislative session, and what your plans are for the media and public access during the session. And with that, let's get started. I have to admit several people. Let me admit those, and then we will get started with Speaker Hanshaw. And for those of you attending the education panel after this, you will need to sign out and sign back in to hear Higher Education Commission Chancellor Sarah Tucker, Superintendent of Schools Clayton Birch, and our other guests. So as soon as I get everybody admitted, Speaker Hanshaw, I will on the call. We actually had to add more people. We had more than 50 people signing up, so we had to expand the audience. So that's great. Good coverage today. We expect to have good coverage tomorrow. I will ask everyone except this, the delegates to mute, please. And then when we have questions later, I will recognize you and you can unmute. If you have questions, you can put those in the chat. So if everyone who is not a delegate would mute. And with that, Speaker Hanshaw, I will turn this over to you to speak and to recognize your people, or I can bring them in as you prefer. Thank you, sir.
All right, Don, sure. Well, thanks for having us today. We appreciate a chance to spend a little bit of time talking with you about where we are in the COVID-19 2021 legislative session. Don, let's go ahead and just take your questions about coronavirus first, because if that's what's on the mind of your audience, let's start there. So we know we're in an unprecedented situation. The 2021 legislative session is probably going to be like unlike any other we've ever had in terms of how we deal with the business of the House and how we keep everyone safe. So we know that already, just in the matter of the past couple of weeks, 2 states have already convened their legislative sessions and had them go into recess because of coronavirus outbreaks in the legislative sessions in those chambers. So we are cautious. We are trying to make certain that we're taking every precaution we can here to keep people as safe as we can. The House will convene next Wednesday, but just so everyone knows, we will be making sort of a game day decision each day and each week about what kind of access and how widely our committees will meet and how extensive their agendas will be based on what the coronavirus situation is sort of here in the Capitol and in the state for that matter, because we bring people from all over West Virginia here to the Capitol and put them into the Golden Dome for 60 days. Most of you who cover the Capitol know that even under the best of circumstances, 60 days in the legislative session is a great place to catch a cold or get sick, even in the best of times. So we are going to have our galleries closed to guests this session because we're going to be using those galleries for social distancing purposes. The north and south galleries in the House will be used for member seating. The west gallery is going to be our press gallery. So you will have access to the House in live time. You will be permitted in the House chamber in a special gallery. We've got a specific place that's dedicated just for the press. So you will have that access. You'll be in the West Gallery with a full view of everything that goes on in real time. We're still going to, of course, broadcast the session live and stream it just as we always have. Our committee process this year is going to look a little different because we want to minimize the amount of time that members are in close proximity to each other. We are going to conduct committee meetings this year mostly on the House floor or in the what we call the East Wing Conference Room, the committee room where the Government Organizations Committee and the Health Committee often meet. So those will be the rooms in which we primarily conduct the committee business of the House this year. We do anticipate trying to work a fairly aggressive agenda very early in the session for those first couple of weeks, because our sister bodies in other states around the country have found themselves shut down by coronavirus very recently. We do not want that. And even if we find ourselves in that predicament, we want to be sure we've done the people's business, passed the things that we're trying to pass to move West Virginia in a positive direction. So if we're shut down, we can still have had a positive legislative session, realizing that there'll be things that may be left undone. Coronavirus has monopolized the world and monopolized West Virginia over the course of the past 11 months. All of us have talked about little else for these past 11 months, but still we know there's important business to be done in terms of what we can do to make West Virginia the easiest choice for people to stay here in West Virginia, to create a business, to create a family. And we also want to make it an attractive place for people to move from other parts of America. So the coronavirus has taught a lot of people a lot of things. And some of those things have been that large scale congested municipal living may not be for everyone anymore. And we as Americans have learned how to work remotely in a way that no one thought would have been possible as recently as just a year ago. People in whole industries are now learning how to work remotely when as recently as a year ago, they would have never been willing to even entertain the idea. In my day job, I'm in the private practice of law, and many of our clients have embraced it, have quite taken to the notion that they don't need to come to our offices. We don't need to come to their offices, that we can conduct their business remotely just fine. Our office still remains closed today to the public, 11 months later, with largely unnoticed disruption in our business. So the way Americans work has changed fundamentally. And that means we have to make some changes here in West Virginia to accommodate that and hopefully attract people here to our state. That means being able to connect people in West Virginia to the rest of the world. And you'll see us very early in the session this year, again, have another broadband expansion bill. People are working around the clock on those proposals right now. There are proposals for additional middle mile construction. There are proposals for making it easier to attach fiber to utility poles. There are proposals for making it easier to deploy wireless technology in West Virginia. All those things will be priority bills for us when we convene next week. We know that people are looking for ways to participate in outdoor recreation now in ways that maybe they never have before. The idea that people would go to movie theaters for entertainment now and be in a congested space has in some ways given way to people who are participating more in outdoor recreation, looking for more opportunities to be outdoors. We have been working with our Department of Commerce and our Division of Tourism on how we can entice more people to come to participate in West Virginia's outdoor recreation opportunities here. You'll see a proposal from the governor to elevate the profile of the Department of Tourism this session. I won't steal the governor's thunder. I'll let him make the announcement about tourism, but let it suffice to say that we anticipate making a move to raise the profile of our tourism office here in West Virginia. We know that we need to clarify issues related to income taxes for remote workers. When we're looking to bring people here to West Virginia to work in office buildings here in our state and work from home here in West Virginia to their remote work jobs, they need to be certain that they're getting fair and equitable tax treatment. Some tax issues have been brought to our attention in other states that have impeded the ability of remote workers to really fully take advantage of what our potential could be here in West Virginia. So we expect to make a move to clarify what the income tax implications are for remote workers who are choosing to do their craft here in West Virginia. We know that the governor over the course of the past 11 months has been forced to issue a number of executive orders that have been designed to help us deal with the pandemic. Many of those have resulted in great savings and great expansion of services to West Virginians. And we want to make some of those permanent. Delegate Espinosa is on the call today. I often attribute the quote from Delegate Espinosa that if we repealed a regulation and the sky didn't fall, then let's make the repeal permanent. That's no more clear anywhere than perhaps in the provision of telehealth services. We have more West Virginians accessing telehealth services now than maybe we've ever had before. So we want to make sure that there's an opportunity available for anyone who wishes to access healthcare provider through telehealth, that they have an opportunity to do that. We know that we need to make sure we're lowering as many barriers to occupational licensing as possible. We want people to come to West Virginia. We want to make it easy for them to choose to be here. And that means making it easy to get a license to do their business here. So our Committee on Government Organization is actively looking to make West Virginia congruent with other licensing regimes around the country, so that when people move here from West Virginia with an occupational license that was issued elsewhere, we need to make that as portable as we can make it, so that they can begin applying their trade here in West Virginia as quickly as possible. We know that we know that life is changing for a number of West Virginians. We know that we have to do everything possible to make it easy to choose our state. That means taking a look at city, county, state government. Do we have the right government services being provided at the right level? Has the pandemic shown us that some healthcare services need to be provided on a more regional basis, or at a state level versus at a local level, or at a local level rather than at a state level? We've learned some things about how we deliver healthcare in West Virginia over the course of the last year, and we're going to move on some of those to make sure that people have access to the quality of care that they need. I have used 11 of the 15 minutes, Don. I'm going to turn it over to Delegate Summers now from Taylor County for comments from our majority leader.
Delegate Summers, we will be kind with the clock. We want to hear what you have to say. Thank you. Thank you, Speaker.
Well, I just want to reiterate that what the speaker said, in that a lot of our issues have been brought forward because of the crisis of the pandemic, things that have been brought to the surface that we really need to address this session. He was talking about healthcare issues with telehealth. We're also looking at our health departments. Have they been able to react effectively? Has their authority been well managed? Is this a state versus a local issue? Some local health departments, as you know, have been able to manage fine, while others have had trouble doing that. So how do you coordinate that in a pandemic like this? Who takes precedent in what you're doing in that area? So we'll be looking through the health committee at different parameters of health departments. Their funding is also included in that. If you'll recall, several years ago, their budgets were cut. We reinstituted some of that and also gave them the ability to bill. Is there still a deficit there that we need to address in our budget? We'll be looking at that. I don't know if he brought up education, such trials we've had in our state with education and the pandemic, and parents are reaching out to us wanting other choices. You know, we've talked about school choice issues in the past during session, and that was from our perspective as a state, what options do we provide? But now it's the parents, it's many parents reaching out to us. And I feel so sad when they call me and they're crying that their children is not doing well, they don't know what to do, begging us for some other options for them. So you will see discussion of that this session. I think something else Roger maybe didn't touch on yet was, with this crisis, we've seen a lot of unemployment fraud. We know that that happens, and we'll be getting some information from Workforce West Virginia on that issue. How prevalent is it? What is the financial impact that that has had? And we'll be reviewing that. Executive powers and how long they last will be reviewed. What has happened? This is so unprecedented. But what do we want in the future? Future crises for us will probably be in the forms of natural disasters such as floods. We want our government to be able to be flexible and to react to those things. But at what point do we want some buy-in or legislative approval for that? So we're going to be talking about that.
Okay, Amy, if you're finished, let's switch it over to Paul Espinosa now.
Very good.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Don, and thank you to the West Virginia Press Association, AARP, WVU, and the West Virginia Press Association Foundation for hosting this afternoon's legislative Lookahead. I'm honored to represent the 66th district in the West Virginia House of Delegates and to once again serve as the House Majority Whip. And I look forward to discussing the issues likely to be considered during the upcoming 2021 legislative session. The supermajorities our House and Senate Republican caucuses secured in November provide a unique opportunity to further address impediments the job creation that for too long have caused West Virginia to lag behind much of the rest of the nation in a number of key economic indicators. And I'm encouraged by our discussions with my new House colleagues and our Senate counterparts as we formulate an aggressive legislative agenda for the coming session. As the speaker noted, perhaps one thing that has resulted from the pandemic is the demonstrated benefit of telehealth and other flexibilities that the governor has enabled through executive order. And where it has been shown that regulations are unnecessary, I fully anticipate we'll enact legislation to make those changes permanent. Another legislative priority of mine that the speaker mentioned is to lower the barriers to entry for those seeking to enter the workforce by reforming licensure requirements for our building trades that have historically made it difficult for new workers to enter those fields. And like Leader Summers, while I applaud all those associated with our public school system who are striving to educate our children under extremely challenging conditions, there's simply no reason to continue to deny our parents and students the school choice options that are available elsewhere in our neighboring states and across the nation. And I'm certainly optimistic that we'll enact legislation to remedy that here this session. I'm certainly excited about the opportunity before us to make West Virginia an even better place to live, work, and raise a family. I would like to again thank the Press Association for hosting this afternoon's forum. I look forward to addressing your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate. And we'll go to the minority in just a second. On behalf of the media in the state, the reporters, the photographers, whether it's radio, television, or print, I want to thank you for your concern about the health. That we recognize that it's a very difficult situation, probably more so in the House, and we greatly appreciate the effort that you are putting into keeping everybody safe. And with that, I will turn it over then to Minority Leader Delegate Doug Skaff.
Well, thank you, Don, and it's an honor to be here today as coming to you from a new seat as Minority Leader, and thanks to the Press Association, AARP, and WVU, and everything you do. I have a fondness, it's no secret, for local journalism and our press, and I really appreciate what you're doing, especially during these times, keeping our West Virginians informed and open to what is going on. So thank you for that. I want to echo some of the things that the Majority Leader and the Speaker said. You know, we have 23 members strong. We're excited to get to work, and we want to work together with the majority party and things that we can agree to. I think, you know, they hit the nail on the head. You know, obviously this pandemic has shifted our focus, from example, for making broadband our number one, number two, and number three priority. Because if we expect to attract people here or keep people here in West Virginia to live, work, and raise their family and do what they do best, we can't do that without the infrastructure in place. The bottom line here is, I think it's important, it's very important that we put West Virginians first. We focus on the people who are here, the people who've made the sacrifices, the people who've chosen to stay in West Virginia. And like they said, those who may have come to West Virginia because it's a safer place, because it's a place to live where they can work from abroad. And we got to give them the resources to succeed here. I think you're going to see from us, like the Majority Leader said, it's very important to us. I think during this pandemic, during this emergency, we saw some powers given to the executive branch, rightfully so. But when an emergency turns into an ongoing situation or a long drawn out saga, I think we need to look at how those roles are defined. And we as elected officials from all parts of West Virginia are elected to be the eyes and ears of the people of West Virginia. And we should have come together. We should have come together when this thing was evident that it was going to draw on for a long time. I don't think, you know, having one person in charge of allocating all that money is in the best interest of all West Virginians, regardless of party, regardless of who's in charge. I think that is something we can agree to and we can work on together and see how we address that situation moving forward. I know we're looking at getting another influx of funds from the federal government to help us get back on our feet. And I think we should have a chance to help the people of West Virginia as elected officials. From a Democratic standpoint, you're going to see us work together to create opportunities for all West Virginians. We want to help create an opportunity where they can obviously stay, where they can rebuild their lives, and they can succeed here in West Virginia. So everything that we do is going to focus on what can we do to help those people here in West Virginia. For example, the existing business owners who have suffered during this pandemic, those restaurant owners, people, the last thing I hate to see when I'm driving throughout town is a boarded up storefront. So you're going to see a big focus on that from us. We want to strengthen our communities, and especially in those cold, devastated communities, whatever we can do to work together across the aisle to help revitalize those areas of West Virginia where those people are hurting the need. I think you're going to see a focus from us, continued focus on us to keep our best and brightest here in the state of West Virginia. The last thing we want to do is to cut any funding to higher education and keep helping our students get that education that they deserve. But we want to also ensure their success after graduation. What can we do to keep them here? What can we do to help create the structure in place where they can stay here? They can raise their family here. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you're going to see us focus on the seniors. We think there's a lot of seniors who want to stay here and be close to their families in West Virginia, but maybe they think it's more attractive to move out of state. So what can we do to keep those people here in West Virginia and make this a destination where retirees and seniors want to stay and live comfortably and be close to their family and succeed? The last thing we want to do is we want West Virginians to have the opportunity to succeed, regardless of what they're doing for a living, regardless of where they live and what part of the state. Create opportunities for them to succeed and provide for their family. And the last thing we would stand for is anything that hurts West Virginians. So you're going to see us ask questions on every piece of legislation. What does this do for West Virginians? And then also, how does this hurt West Virginians? We would not support anything that maybe takes one liability and shifts it from one pocket to the other pocket. We will not stand for that. So I look forward to working with the majority. We have a great relationship in the past. I think Speaker Hanshaw, I thank him for including us in many initiatives and working together. You're going to see a lot of support from our side when it comes to things that we think is in the best interest of West Virginia. We all want to see this state succeed. We say this all the time. I think we all have the best interests at heart. We just have a different way of how we're going to get there. And so hopefully we can come together as one united house. You're not going to see us coming out there being obstructionists, but you will see us hold everyone accountable for pieces of legislation that we think are not in the best interest and well-intended for all West Virginians. So with that, I'd like to turn it over with Sean Hornbuckle to dive deeper into some of the initiatives that we'll be focusing on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doug. And thank you to everyone that's on the call today. Just to sort of reiterate, what Doug was talking about, first and foremost, we want to be working together. I think, in light of the pandemic, of what all of us has gone through, it's really uncovered a lot of commonalities that we have with one another. So, aside from, R's or D's, I think there's a lot of ways that we can work to positive solutions for all West Virginians. Just sort of going back with education. Delegate Summers was talking about, fielding lots of calls from parents and just sort of, not knowing what to do, being afraid. I think that is consistent in a lot of our districts. One of the things that I've been, discussing with some of our constituents down here in Cabell and Lincoln counties is just how we do that. One of the things is food insecurity. Again, I think that the pandemic really showed that we're not as solvent on that as that we need to be. And when she talked about parents, personally, we haven't heard about the choice issue, but parents, they do need extra support. I think that the governor, he's made a tremendous step in the right direction about community and schools. I'd like to continue to applaud him for that. However, we can't stop there. We have to vastly expand that. One of the ways that we think we can do that, I know last year during our education committee, we had a consultant in there with Our Children, Our Future. She talked about parent coaching. Her name was Sheila Coleman. I think that would be huge right now. Again, just adding an extra layer of support for parents who are struggling. Excuse me for that. So I think that's really big. Also right now with the pandemic, we have some mental health issues with our children. I know here in Cabell County, we've had incidents with mental health and suicide actually go up. So we want to make sure that we are protecting those kids in that fashion. Again, along with working together, even though we didn't get all the legislation last year that we wanted, I sort of tipped my hat to Delegate Summers, as I know I had, extensive conversations with her on how we enhance mental health for our students. So again, I think there's a lot of ways that we can work together on that. When we go to small business owners, that's the big ticket item. Whether you're the mom and pop store or you're that local restaurant, with the pandemic, it showed that, we're not on a level playing field with some of the big boxes, whether it's a Walmart or whether it's a Red Lobster. So we want to really dig down and help those folks, because at the end of the day, they're the backbone of our economy. I think also with the restaurant industry, It's sort of revealed a lot of red tape that we have in that industry and some archaic rules that do not allow us to be competitive with some of our neighboring states. So we definitely want to make sure that we're able to cut some red tape there. And then, Speaker Hanshaw, he's in the right spot. We're going to have a lot of people that are wanting to relocate to the Mountain Mama, to West Virginia. We have beautiful rivers, streams, waters, hiking, all those things. But we also have to think with the young professionals that we're hoping and we will attract, they're going to have an aptitude to get in some of those new industries that are working remotely. But West Virginia, we have jobs, we have those things, we have to get better. But it's about what do you do after work? How do we care for your children? Where do you play? So I also think that, not just licensure, but we have to be more of a socially progressive state. We have to look at that to make sure that we are truly inviting to all folks. I know there's also been a lot of talk about potentially looking at the personal income tax. I think from a Democratic standpoint, we're open to anything. But, by my trade, I'm a financial advisor. So looking at the numbers, you have to have something to replace that. I think that with our state, we have to take an aggressive look at our cannabis program. I know with the current medical cannabis program, some of the things I'm hearing in our district, that we didn't give the little guy a true chance to be able to thrive and succeed in that. I also think if we were to look at the legalization and regulation of cannabis from adult use, it would do our state a lot of good and might potentially be a tool in our toolkit to replace some of that income. I know last year in 2020, Colorado brought in over $2 billion. They've got about 5.79 people, 5.7 million people. We have about 1.8. So if you do that to scale, we have about a third of that. So we could potentially bring in about 660 million. I think that would do a lot for our coffers to be able to help with infrastructure needs, to be able to help with education needs, also maybe tip over into healthcare. So we want to make sure that we're taking a holistic approach and how to make sure that all West Virginians can prosper.
Thank you, Delegate. We appreciate it. Thank you, Delegate Skaff. Reporters in the chat function, if you want to ask a question, please sign your name. And our first question, if your delegates are ready, our first question will go to Stephen Allen Adams with Ogden.
Yeah, Steve Adams here. This may be a question for any of you all, but I know Delegate Summers, we've talked about this in regards. You all were talking about regulations and changing regulations and outdated regulations and trying to ease issues. Obviously, one of the issues we've got right now is a nursing shortage. And we've talked about this before in regards to certificate of need reforms. I know the Mercatus Center, I think, ranked us 38th as far as healthcare openness. Are there any talks about trying to make changes this year in regards to certificate of need in order to deal with the access issues that state residents are having in regards to healthcare? Obviously, telehealth is helpful, but at some point, sometimes you got to see somebody in person. So what are we talking about in regards to those type of reforms? Thank you.
I'll address that, Steve. I will have a bill for the repeal of certificate of need. I've had one in the past. We will move forward on that if we have caucus buy-in, and those talks will occur as a session goes forward and we see where the majority of our people are on that issue. Over the past few years, we have tweaked some of those categories because when we got into our opioid crisis, we found that certificate of need was inhibiting our ability to stand up places of mental health to help people with their problem. We saw how in that situation, government got in the way of us trying to help our people. So it is a debate about supply versus demand, and does healthcare fit into that economic model or not? But I personally just do not feel that government needs to be, or the bureaucratic process rather, needs to be in the way of our healthcare system. So we'll see how that unfolds over the session, and if we have enough members that agree on that position.
Okay, anyone else? Delegate Skaff, you want to address that?
Yeah, and when it comes to our nursing shortage, that's a great opportunity for us. If we can't take the full enchilada and look at ways where we can just carte blanche, take away the income tax. What if you offered no income tax for recent college graduates who go into the nursing profession? You know, if they stay here for 5 years, and that's a way to increase those students going into nursing. It's a way for maybe those travel nurses who are looking at coming to West Virginia as part-time, then they might want to stay here if they have no income tax. I think we got to be creative. We got to think differently. And if we aren't able to just go across the board and give an income tax break to everybody, let's look at those places of need where we need to attract those type of folks that West Virginians are depending on for the jobs of tomorrow. Nursing is definitely one of them. So whatever we can do to increase, nurses in West Virginia, whether that's incentivize them to stay here, whether that's create more opportunities for them to go to school, we need to do that.
Thank you. Our next question is from Dave Beard of the Dominion Post in Morgantown.
Hi, mine's just a simple little nuts and bolts curiosity question. You do live video feed for the House floor sessions. Will you be doing the video feeds for the committee meetings on the House floor? And I don't believe Gov.org has video capability. Are you considering adding that? Because especially with a lot of new people, it's going to be hard for us sitting up here in Morgantown or wherever to know whose voices are speaking. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll field that, Dave. So the answer is no, we're not. We will continue the live feed for anything that happens on the floor of the House. So the committee meetings that will meet on the floor will be live streamed. The committees that meet in Gov.org will be audio streamed. We do have that technology in place right now. So they will all be live streamed, but we haven't contemplated adding any additional technology at this point.
And David, what we can do is we can try to make sure in those committees that people identify themselves to be more helpful.
Thank you, delegates. And now a question from the Associated Press, CUNY Dill.
Hey there, Junaid Dill with AP. I had a pretty narrow question about John Mant. Obviously, his controversial comments in the past. Is there going to be any repercussion for him since he won back his seat? Any changes to his committee assignments or things? Or will it be a pretty hands-off approach? Thanks.
So the committee assignments for 2021 have been posted. So we've posted to our website who the committee chairs are, who the committee members are for each of our committees of the House. We have what we call major committees here that really are the clearinghouse for much of our legislation that comes to the floor. And we have another set of subject matter committees that process more narrow bills that have particular implications for various industries. I don't know what I can say beyond Delegate Mant does have committee assignments. They have been posted to the internet, so one could find his committee assignments on our website.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our next question is from Liz McCormick.
Good afternoon. This is Liz McCormick with West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Hi, everyone. I had a question just about education. I was wondering if you all could talk a little bit more about what sort of education initiatives you're looking at. I'm particularly thinking about K through 12 students this past fall. Superintendent Birch said that 1/3 of those K through 12 students failed at least one core class because of the challenges of the pandemic. And I'm wondering if you guys are thinking about any sort of remediation plans, any sort of legislation to help those kids catch up, if that's anything that you're thinking about, and just broadly about education in general. Thank you.
Let me pass that to Delegate Espinosa, who's a former House Education Chair. And Paul, I'll let you field that one.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Liz, thank you for the question. And again, while we certainly are supportive of expanding choices for our parents and our students, we clearly recognize that for the vast majority of students, they're going to continue to matriculate into traditional manner. So certainly want to do all we can to support our traditional public education system to, again, address many of the shortfalls that you indicate have been reported. Frankly, I think just in talking with my colleagues, my Republican House colleagues in particular, and members of the public, I think one of the things that I think is most important is to get our students back in school. It troubles me a little bit when I hear, particularly over here in the Eastern Panhandle, I hear about some of our surrounding jurisdictions, where they're already starting to talk about whether or not they're even going to return to school in the fall. So I think that's certainly something that I hope that our state school board, working with our school districts, will continue to do everything possible that we can to make our school classrooms as safe as possible so that our students can return to school. And I think you'll see us working very closely with the governor, looking at this next round of CARES Act funding that's just been received to, again, just make sure we're using that in the best way possible to get our students back in the classroom where I think we can agree most students perform best.
Thank you, Delegate. Anyone else want to comment on that?
Sure, I'd like to, Don, if that's okay.
Certainly.
So I think in agreement with Delegate Espinosa, I think one of the things we really have to take a hard look at is safety. As he said over there in the EP, they're talking about, are they even going to return to school in the fall? So I think this is one of those unique situations that there's no wrong answer. There's some people that have been clamoring to get back into the schools because nothing replaces that one-on-one attention. And I don't think they're wrong for that. But on the other hand, I think there's a lot of, teachers, students, parents that are sort of tentative. They don't really want to get back in there for health reasons. And I don't think that's a wrong answer. So we really have to make sure that we are taking a measured and detailed approach to ensure the safety of all people involved. But I would like to say that we are working on currently right now what we would call a Student Rescue Act. And the first thing on that priority list is actually expanding. We currently right now have code. Some students are able to go to summer school. We think that we should make a robust program, leveraging the new dollars that are going to come in from the federal program to create that. Create a situation to where kids are able to bring their GPAs up. Even if that is not their a desire or need, a lot of parents and students feel like they just haven't learned enough this year. So we need to be as supportive as we can, as Minority Leader Skaff said, thinking in different, innovative ways. And again, from those federal monies that we currently have and the new round we're going to get, I think there's enough there to be able to adequately pay our teachers and put together a robust, innovative program that would help our children during the summer to get caught up to speed.
Thank you, Delegate. Our next question is from Lacey Pearson.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, delegates. I actually have two questions. They're related to the jails. The first thing I want to ask about is the jail bonds that were used in the 1990s to build the regional jail system. Those are going to mature this year. And I wanted to see if the House is looking at reallocating that money to maybe upkeep or repairs to the jails. And my second question is, when you're looking at COVID relief plans, does the jail population factor into that? The jails are obviously really overcrowded right now. I know DHS has the authority over who gets moved to which jail when. But do you plan on proposing that? I know you had bail reform last year in an effort to alleviate the jail population. That clearly has not maybe been applied in the way that you wanted it to, but just what's your take on that?
Let me take that one, Lacey. So the county jail bill situation is a noose around the neck of every county in West Virginia. So what we have to do something about it. We have a growing number of counties that are in arrears now, that are actually in default to the state of West Virginia on their county jail bills, including mine. So this is not a problem that's unique to any county. What have we thought about doing with reallocating the bond payments, Lacey? The answer to that question is yes. So we know we have jail maintenance issues. Secretary Sandy has come to us before with proposals for just preventative maintenance, not even substantial renovations, but just preventative maintenance that we've deferred on the regional jail system in West Virginia. How does it relate to the coronavirus situation? Well, it's a big deal, because I know one of the three counties that I personally represent has a jail in it. It's a federal facility. It's not one of the state facilities, but the problems are just the same. And those problems are that workers who live at home and move into and out of the jail every day are exposed sometimes in the jail population, and really the jails themselves act as vectors. So how do we deal with that? We don't know. That's a dialogue. That's an ongoing dialogue. Those conversations happen every day between DHHR, DMAPS, and the governor's office. I've not seen a proposal yet this year for our consideration, but I have no reason to doubt that there will not be one, because it is a vector that has to be managed.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our next question will be from Brad McElhenney, followed by a question from Stephen Allen Adams. Brad?
Hello, friends. Good to see everyone. There has been talk, particularly from the governor, some seeming enthusiasm in the Senate about phasing out the state income tax. I feel like I've heard less about that in the House of Delegates. Delegate Espinosa, there was a blog item yesterday that cited you and some sort of questionnaire that went out. I took it to gauge the willingness of your fellow delegates to make hard choices that might have to be accomplished if any kind of income tax phase out is to be accomplished. Do you have a feel, whoever may want to take it, for what kind of enthusiasm there might be for a big move on income taxes in the House of Delegates this year? Thank you.
Well, I'll be happy to take that question first. Brad, I appreciate the question. And I was about to respond that if you're wondering whether there's been any discussion in the House, then you obviously haven't been reading media reports. But, let me just begin by saying that, I hope you can appreciate that we generally don't discuss our whip operations in great detail. But I will say that any suggestion that the items listed in the story that you referenced constitute a plan is ludicrous. We generally speaking, we routinely reach out to our members to gauge their perspective on various issues or even components of issues to gauge whether they're components or legislation that they can support, but just as importantly, if not more importantly, which components are non-starters. And frankly, we sometimes even ask our members questions when we have a pretty good sense that it may be a non-starter or may not have much support, just to confirm that. And I think as you look through the list of some of the items that were included in that media report, I think it's probably fair to say that a number of those are non-starters, at least from my perspective. But that's the process we have to go through, particularly when you have a House that has roughly a third new members. Unless we ask our members, where their pain points are, what are some of the aspects of a potential tax reform they can support, we simply don't know. So that's the process that we engage on with potential tax reform or really any piece of legislation. And that process is ongoing, Brad. We're still continuing that dialogue. I will say that generally speaking, our members are very interested in providing meaningful tax relief. If you look at some of the legislation we've enacted in recent years, I think we've done a pretty good job with civil justice reform. We've enacted meaningful regulatory reform where we regularly review our regulations. We've enacted significant education reform, although I'm very optimistic and hopeful we're going to build upon that this session. But probably the one area that we haven't really accomplished as much as I think many of our members would like is in the area of tax reform. We have set ourselves on the elimination, on a glide path for the elimination of the state income tax on Social Security. I think that was a big accomplishment. But meaningful tax reform, allowing West Virginians to keep more of their hard-earned dollars, that is an area that I think is very important to our members. We're just still in the phase of trying to ascertain what our members can support, and again, just as importantly, what they can't support. And that will inform our discussions with our Senate colleagues, and especially the governor, who has expressed strong support for addressing personal income tax reform this session.
Thank you, Delegate. Now I'd like to go to Stephen Allen Adams for a question.
Yeah, this time I want to turn to broadband a little bit. Obviously, there's going to be a big focus on that. I know lawmakers, Republican lawmakers had pledged to do an additional $150 million spread out over 3 years. We got RDOF grant money. In fact, just the other day, the Economic Development Authority approved loan insurance for 4 companies. And that's based off the governor's executive order. And I know you all had talked about making those, removing those regulatory caps permanently during this session. Also, there's been a lot of concern raised about Frontier Communications and their ability to deliver on some of their promises, both in the PSC order and what they claim that they want to do with RDOF dollars. So what are we looking at in regards to broadband? Not just obviously trying to encourage people to expand it, but also to hold those accountable to their promises for what they say they will try to deliver. Thank you.
Steve, let me start with that one. So I don't want to put words in the mouth of Delegate Skaff. I'll invite him to comment after I finish, but there are very few things in the House for which we can get unanimity easier than proposals that expand broadband in the state of West Virginia. We know it's got to be done. We know it is the way that economies run in the 21st century. And I think it's safe to say we have 95 or more votes for anything that puts more people into connectivity in West Virginia. So there are some things that we know we need to do this session. So, for example, we've been working with the governor's office on the broadband loan insurance program that the governor modified by executive order during the pandemic to make providers here in West Virginia eligible to bid on RDOF funding. We have met with the Public Service Commission rather extensively on the question of how do we hold accountable all of those entities that received an award under RDOF. What's frustrating to us is that telecommunications turns out to be an area of law that is largely preempted by federal law. So the scope of what we can do here in West Virginia in the legislature or by executive order or in any way is very largely regulated by applicable federal law and FCC policy. But nevertheless, we want to do everything we can. And that means making it easier for people to get fiber on poles. That means making it easier for providers to access state rights of way. When it's necessary to run fiber in a state right of way, we want to make sure we've eliminated every impediment and every barrier there is to that. We want to make sure that we're making it easy to deploy wireless technology here. You know, we're a fairly sparsely populated state, and our population density is a problem when it comes to providing utility service and last mile connectivity. So wireless providers or wireless service is often the preferred way to deliver service in many parts of our state. So we want to be sure that we're making it easy to build towers and that we can situate towers on every piece of property that would make a good cell site for a tower. So all of those are things that some of our members have spent the fall and the winter leading up to this week working on, and we expect to have proposals on most of those things.
Delegate Skaff, would you like to address that?
Sure. And yeah, I mean, Speaker Hanshaw, he obviously knows where we are. I mean, he would have our caucus's full support and anything we can do to enhance broadband and hold those service providers accountable. The bottom line here is this, you know, the governor was sitting on $600 million that could have used to help our Wi-Fi connections. And we have students going back to school and trying to learn remotely, and they have to sit in their car in a parking lot so they can get connected somewhere and drive 30 miles. That's unacceptable. When we had money sitting there, when we knew our kids were going to have to go back to school and they wanted to do it by Wi-Fi, when you have to drive to get connection and we have money sitting there, that's unacceptable. So I know if we were probably all together as a one unified House of Delegate body, we would have probably worked together to come up with a way to spend some of that money to help our students get reconnected faster, quicker, and more efficiently than sitting in a car after driving 30 miles just to get educated. So those are the things that we absolutely agree on. I look forward to the proposals brought forth by Speaker Hanshaw and his team, and there's no doubt that we would definitely want to work together. And this should be our first, second, and third priority right out of the bat.
Don, if I could add briefly, I think sometimes we fail to probably talk about some of the legislation that we have enacted in bipartisan fashion in recent years. I know, for example, the wireless providers came to us expressing concern that they were running into some roadblocks getting their facilities attached on poles owned by other incumbent providers and other providers. We enacted legislation to make it easier for municipalities and counties and villages to start co-ops if it makes sense for them. So, and I think even more recently, I believe I heard an announcement by, I think it was one of the Appalachian Power, I believe, that indicated they're going to be running some fiber. I suspect that's a direct result of some legislation we enacted that does make it easier for those power companies in order to install that type of infrastructure. So I think we are having an impact. I think it's one of these issues where there really is no silver bullet. I think it's going to take just a variety of actions. And as a speaker and Minority Leader Skaff indicated, very confident we're going to see bipartisan support for additional legislation this session.
Thank you for the explanation, Delegate. with that, we'll probably get close to closing, but I did want ask for a clarification from Speaker Hanshaw if I could. Mr. Speaker, will reporters be allowed in committee rooms?
I don't know the answer to that question, Don. So certainly when committees meet in the House chamber, certainly. So the West Gallery is going to be made available to the press all session for things that happen on the House floor. When committees meet in the sort of the East Wing conference room that we call the GovOrg conference room, I don't know the answer to that question yet. It's going to depend a little bit on the day-to-day sort of virus situation. We are operating at this point on the assumption that the answer will be yes, but it's going to potentially fluctuate every day depending upon what we see with infection rates.
Okay.
But certainly for those that meet on the House floor, the answer is yes.
I guess I should ask a follow-up question. In terms of the general public, have you made a ruling on that yet in terms of people coming to the Capitol or the chamber or watching government in action?
Well, we will, anyone who is called to testify on a bill or who has comment to offer on a bill will certainly be admitted. Anyone who has an appointment to see a member will certainly be admitted. After that, we are following the guidelines and the protocols as suggested by the executive branch.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We appreciate the explanation. And again, as I stated earlier, we greatly appreciate your concern for your members' health, the media's health, and the public's health. So we certainly understand where you're coming from, and we'll monitor it. With that, I would like to thank everybody. I know you gentlemen, and ladies and gentlemen, your time is very valuable. We appreciate the access you gave the media, and thank you very much, and be safe the rest of your day.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
And for the
everybody.
reporters,
Thank you.
you can log out and log back in to the next session. Thank you all again. Stop recording.